Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
All right, so Marc Maron went on a smaller podcast recently and did them a favor by getting into some of the Rogan controversy, rehashing some of the things that he said about Rogan in the past, elaborating some of his positions a little bit, as well as clarifying after Rogan had spoke about him that he got some of the facts wrong, and as well as just talking a lot about his history in comedy and his history at the Comedy Store specifically. So that is where this interview is taking place, and these two interviewers are door people at the Comedy Store, meaning they're comedians who are part of the hierarchy, trying to move their way up, get stage time there, that sort of thing. So they're part of the current LA Comedy Store scene. That's mostly what they're discussing here, and that gets a little bit into the Rogan sphere comedy stuff, because that is where Rogan came from in terms of, you know, reaching a lot of people. The Carlos Mencia controversy, all of that happened at the Comedy Store after he came from Boston, I believe. So that's mostly where Marc Maron's lore begins with him. But here's what Marc is saying on the Side Boob podcast.
Do you think you have a healthier relationship with the store now?
Yeah, like what's it like? Because you leave, there's like a coke bender, you leave, you don't come back for years, I'm guessing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you come back maybe sober. Like, what was coming back here like? Was that?
Well, what happened was, like, yeah, I left, but it takes a long time to shake psychosis.
Yeah.
Still trying.
Because, like, I was pretty deep into, like, this place is a haunted fucking dump, you know, and, you know,
Yes.
but it took a long time for me because I decided that it was involved in some, you know, big mystical conspiracy that was sort of ever evolving in my head, and that it had some part in the end of the world, which I think lately I've been like, it kind of does.
Yeah.
You know, because of Rogan
Yeah.
and his place in getting Trump elected. I'm like, holy shit, I was right.
You were right.
You know, it
This
just
whole
took
time.
a long time.
You started here.
Yeah. And
It seemed like 2015 is when like things started to ramp up, because I know there was like Dark Ages, and then there was like the Rogan sphere kind of came in here and kind of ramped things up a little. What was your place at the Comedy Store during those years when it seemed to be like maybe a little more packed around here, or just like Tom Segura, Bert Kreischer, all these guys like living here rather than like going to Austin, you know?
I don't know, I was in Boston doing shows when Rogan started. So I've known that guy when he started. And I never liked him really.
Yeah.
And look, we were co-workers. I mean, there's this idea that we are a community, we are. And like it always felt tense to me with him, but it was really me.
Was it
Was it his
competitive?
comedy, or was it like a vibe?
Yeah.
I just didn't think that
Offstage.
comedy was for the jocks, you know.
Yeah. Not
So-
for me, brother.
You know, it was just that, like, you know, he came in as a kickboxing champion, and then the whole Fear Factor thing. It's just like, to me,
Yeah.
and then he co-opted, you know, this idea that he was somehow, you know, representing Hicks, and that bothered me. That you know, but look, he paid his dues. He's a real comic.
Yeah.
But the sphere of men that he attracted to were the opposite of me.
Yes.
So I never wanted to be in with them, but you know, they seemed to respect me. And Joe and I had moments where we had problems, but I did his podcast early on, and because we were all doing each other's podcasts, that was the other thing. My feeling was like, this is not my audience,
Yeah.
and there's too many of them, and they took over the place. So me performing for bros is not a great matchup.
No. Yeah.
You know, I'd rather just have, you know, tourists.
Yeah.
You know, who are like, what are we watching? You know, as opposed to
Don't speak.
A blank
this kind
palette.
of defined
Personality.
Malignant masculinity that was inhabiting the place. You know, I've been sort of at odds with those people since probably the beginning of time. Yeah, that they're, you know, and this sort of replicates high school in a lot of ways.
Just an archetype of maybe what Rogan represents a little.
Yeah, and but what he definitely represents. But like I know, like I don't have anything against those guys in a lot of ways, and I don't have anything against you know Bird or Tom or you know. It's just when it gets to be, like what really just started to happen was that this sort of idea that these guys were free thinkers or on the you know really pushing the edge of comedy just because of their need to you know use certain words and marginalize people, and that just became annoying because for me that is not the edge. There's no real risk in that. But like you know Rogan, when he tried to you know character assassinate me for an hour a few weeks ago,
I saw that.
Did you love that or what?
I didn't watch it the whole thing. I just saw bits and pieces.
You must like that you're living in his head
Yeah,
a lot though, because you
Took
know
a while.
he went like months and months, maybe years without talking about you, and one day he's like, you know what, fuck it, and he just got in on it.
They all did, and it was the day after I ended my podcast, which was kind of
whoa, I didn't
telling.
know that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
You're like, I don't have a fucking mic right now. That's crazy.
And you know, and also like Schultz took a shot at me, DeStefano took a shot at me. You know, and like Schultz was trying to bait me, but it all happened like within days of each other. So
Yes.
I don't know if there was a group text or.
Yeah, I think it is.
WhatsApp message.
Today's the day. Pod's over. Let's hit him.
We've been counting the
But like
minutes.
Yeah, so these interviewers are definitely stirring the pot. And also, you see a little bit of the team player thing going on here, right? These are LA comics, and so they're comfortable throwing shots at the Rogan sphere. They get into this whole thing about jocks in comedy. I don't know who the guy interviewer here is, but the girl I've seen on Bobby Lee's podcast, Tiger Belly. So she's making her way up in the comedy world, and it seems like people in that scene maybe have internalized this smoke between the LA comedy scene and the Austin comedy scene. It seems like people are more and more willing to take these shots, and that's only being fueled by Marc Maron, which is definitely petty. Like, let's be clear. Marc's definitely being petty here, and he's saying that. And he's actually giving you some very interesting insight into why he's being so petty. He's saying that this is something that goes back to when I was a kid in high school, always fighting against the jocks, and it's this personality difference, right? Like, he got into comedy because that's where the weirdos and the neurotic people go that have trouble articulating themselves, but they work it out on stage and turn it into an upside. And he feels that that space got taken over by charismatic people like Joe Rogan, that Joe Rogan was a harbinger of a more bro-y, douchey side of comedy that came about. Another person who got this criticism a lot was Dane Cook, which is interesting, contextualized in this sort of bro criticism. I never quite heard it put that way when it came to Dane Cook, even though that's what people would say about him, that he's a douche on stage or whatever. But this idea that the more bro-y types kind of stepped in on the comedy territory because it was something that they could do. They could be charismatic and funny and build an audience and reach a lot of people and become a global phenomenon, which in different ways people like Dane Cook and Joe Rogan did. And for Marc, he's not afraid to tie it into this strain of reactionary politics that comes from Joe Rogan, and correctly ties that to a broader problem in society that helped enable Donald Trump. And Marc won't let that go. And a lot of people on Rogan's side will say, Marc's just being bitter. He's just bitter that he can't be successful. And he's just a hater. And that's 100% true. Marc is a hater. But the thing is, he's good at being a hater. He wouldn't be hating on Joe for this stuff if he wasn't right about it. The reason this is hitting, even if Marc's being petty, is because he's right. And that's why he's locking his jaw on this and he's not going to let go, because he knows he has Rogan when it comes to this. And the shit that they're doing over there is looking increasingly hack. Tony Hinchcliffe is talking about how he thinks it's still the most cutting edge thing to do to just keep punching down and make pro-Trump jokes. He's kissing up to the president in his act, in his material, and he's casting that as some kind of edgy thing to do. And he's getting praise and applause from Joe Rogan and the community that he's created. So the critique is spot on. And the critique of Marc Maron is spot on as well, that he's bitter and he's selfish. And clearly most of his critiques here are very selfish. He's not making that much of a worldly observation here. He's saying these people took over my home turf and things came more easily to them than they came to me. And it is the age-old question of the jock versus the nerd. But another thing that he gets right about this is that Joe Rogan is connected also to this sort of angry masculinity. Although Joe, admittedly, the path he went down in terms of psychedelics and talking about things like that did subdue a lot of the aggression that he kind of emanated early in his career. And he always was a very aggressive, very tense guy, and chilled out a little bit as the podcast became more successful, as he had an outlet for certain things. But all of his early comedy was very fueled by, yelling and screaming and being very loud. And it's kind of this thinly masked rage. And so the way that Joe and his show ties in with the whole political conversation is that Joe became a part of this reactionary network of politics that was speaking to a young adult audience of mostly men who shared in a lot of this rage at various things. And one of the things that Steve Bannon identified about Gamergate, back when that happened, Steve Bannon was a part of that. He was around for that. He wasn't the cause of it because it was kind of just a thing that happened. But Steve Bannon was found on the scene, and he identified at a certain point that this was a harnessable group of angry young men that were motivated by these reactionary feelings of, you can't say certain words, or you can't express certain sexualization of women, things that they were used to doing in private chat rooms or whatever. And all of a sudden there was more public scrutiny on that sort of thing. And it was causing a lot of these young men who were somewhat isolated to dip into these rageful feelings and not have an outlet for it. And so Steve Bannon was one of the guys among many who realized that what they had to do as part of a political project was give those young men an outlet for that rage through politics, specifically through Donald Trump. And that strategy worked through 2016 all the way through the January 6th era. Obviously, it's tied in with all kinds of other things. The immigration narratives tie in with this a lot. Any way that they can tie in economic narratives to that, they try to. And so you see echoes of that throughout Biden's administration as well, because they have to keep the reactionary narratives alive about wokeness and PC culture and all of this. That is how they keep the reactionary side of politics emotional and primed for engagement, primed for political engagement. That was ultimately the win of the Gamergate era of politics and things like the Joe Rogan Experience and what they did to prop up Donald Trump and others around him, was that it's tied to this idea of going out and doing something about it. It encouraged people to do that successfully. And so that anger that was stoked by online engagement of various kinds eventually translated into actual political action, be it through Groyper style bigotry online, targeted harassment of people, or actually going outside and disrupting political events, throwing political events, and voting. And so, I'm not saying that this is all like a one-of-one conspiracy, but rather it was a vast network that sparked, particularly because of how well anger fueled engagement on the internet. And so that was just kind of an endless wealth of engagement for them to utilize to the ends of normalizing Donald Trump. And so here we are. And Marc Maron is correct that this type of shit has taken over politics. It's taken over comedy. It is toxic masculinity. And I like that he says this thing about kind of when he was in a state of psychosis and he thought that there was like a vast conspiracy at the Comedy Store, and it had to do with, the levers of power and all the evil in the world and the end of the world. And he says, now I kind of might have been right about that. And that's almost another reference to the Elephant Graveyard video, which he's been talking about. He didn't bring it up here, but some months back, he mentioned that he's been watching some of these anti-Joe Rogan sphere videos on YouTube and laughing at them, particularly one that took on this doomsday cult theme, placing Joe Rogan at the center of a doomsday cult conspiracy to end the world. And so it's funny that Mark is saying that he relates to that, and all these years later, that seems to have come to fruition, that the bros taking over comedy were truly a harbinger of the end of the world. And the reason for that, the very simple reason for that, is reactionary politics. That's what it is. It's a reaction of anger to the attempted progression of society. And that anger is destructive, and it tears things apart, because reactionary politics is kind of a part of human nature, and it's always there. It's always something that can be capitalized upon, whether it be a Joe Rogan type or somebody else. So the question is, how do you counter that with something else, something that is also appealing to people and can also take up a lot of space in the culture, and maybe also channel some of that same righteous rage about things like the way the world is changing against the will of most of the working people who keep the world turning, or, you know, oligarchy is crystallizing around all of us. All of us see it happening. Even people on the right don't like the oligarchy that is forming under the administration that they ushered in. And yet everybody's powerless to stop it. And that's the kind of thing that is also ever present, just as reactionary anger to progression in society is ever present. But it's harder. It's harder to tie people's rage and righteous rage to things like oligarchy and corporate exploitation. But it's the only answer to the type of politics that Joe Rogan brings to the table. It's not well informed. It's not based on any real system of understanding information. It's really just talking points. It's reactionary talking points that he repeats because it gets an emotional response out of him. And so he knows it'll get an emotional response out of his audience. And there are ways to channel the righteous rage of a new generation of people who are looking to get involved in politics and to channel it in a positive direction. And it's possible that that means being like Marc Maron and being the biggest haters that we possibly can.
Me too close to, too much to do. The mission is too crucial. Shout it out from the rooftops until I lose vocals. Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity.